Hi everyone and welcome back. So in today's video I'm going to be doing a sketchbook review, and I'm going to be reviewing 3 sketchbooks from the Pink Pig company, and they are a UK based company and they specialise in sketchbooks, notebooks, watercolour books, black paper books, scrapbooks, basically just everything you'd need in terms of notebooks and sketchbooks they have on their website. All the paper is acid free, it's all made in Britain, and they have a really lovely range of sketchbooks. So this is not a sponsored video. The company was really kind enough to send me along these 3 sketchbooks to test out, but all the thoughts and opinions, as always with my reviews, are my own. They were just generous enough to send me these sketchbooks so I could do this video today. This is not sponsored. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you the 3 different types of sketchbooks that they've sent me. They make many more. If you're interested, I'll leave a link to their website down below where you can go and explore the different sorts of sketchbooks that they have. They also have a really interesting sort of customizable option for the books. So you can pick the colour of the cover and you can pick the number of pages. They do have several different options, and you can also kind of pick the paper you want inside your book. So they are quite customizable, which I thought was really nice. And the covers of the books are also really interesting. They're made of handmade tissue paper that has either that it's made from banana leaves or it has banana leaves in it. I'm not quite sure which, but there's definitely banana leaves involved in the covers. And the covers have a nice textured feel, and they have lots of sort of natural elements and strands sort of stuck into the tissue paper. So it has a very organic, natural feel to the sketchbooks. They're all spiral bound, which makes it very easy to lay them flat on your lap. I particularly like spiral bound books. The company also has a world arts team, which means they have a group of artists that they sponsor to create artwork using their sketchbooks. They've got a lot of cool stuff. They're definitely worth a check out if you haven't heard of them. So these are the 3 sketchbooks that I was sent, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to basically chuck every supply that I have at these sketchbooks, and I'm just basically going to swatch out different supplies to see how they react on the papers, because I think when you're doing a sketchbook review, at least when I'm watching a sketchbook review, that's one of the things that I find the most helpful, is just to kind of really see what mediums these sketchbooks can handle. So that's what I'm going to do today. So starting first with this white cream coloured sketchbook. All the sketchbooks are A5, and the white one here has 25 pages, and it's got 270 gram paper. Now the little label on the back of the sketchbook says that it's a watercolour paper. It's a very smooth paper, and because it's 270 grams, it's nice and thick. So the first things that I did was I tested out water-based mediums on it. So I tested water-based markers, watercolour pencils, regular watercolours, ink pens, gelatos. I was just kind of like testing out, seeing how the paper reacted with water, seeing how easy it was to spread out the pigment, and the paper was lovely to work on. All the supplies that I tested on this paper worked really well, and because the paper is nice and thick and it's quite smooth, I thought it would be really good for coloured pencils, and so I did a little bit of testing with my polychromos. I also tested a few Prismacolors on the paper. Both of them worked really nicely, and I also tested out paint pens. I did a little bit of testing with some different fine liners to see how they could glide across the paper. I even got out my distress inks and just kind of smudged them around to see how they blended, and every supply that I chucked at this paper worked really well. So I think that this book is particularly good if you're looking for an all-around mixed media sketchbook. And now I tried out the alcohol-based markers. Now normally with alcohol-based markers, my rule of thumb is that mixed media papers don't work very well with alcohol-based markers, for the reason that mixed media or watercolour papers are designed to soak up water, and if you used alcohol-based markers on them, it tends to soak up the ink quicker than using a regular paper. From my experience, I found that alcohol-based markers don't blend very well on mixed media paper, but this wasn't so much the case with this particular paper in this book. I was really surprised at how seamless I was able to get the blending with the markers on this paper. And I also, when I was colouring with them, I didn't feel like the paper was sucking up the ink in quite the same way as I have felt in the past with other papers. So I think if you're looking for an all-around sketchbooks that you can use watercolours, watercolour pencils, regular pencils, inks, graphite, and perhaps a little bit of alcohol-based markers, then I think that that sketchbook is a really good option for you. So I was really pleased with that one. So now I'm working on the red sketchbook, and this sketchbook is a 15-page, 300-gram Bockingford watercolour paper book. And if you haven't heard of Bockingford, they're another UK-based company, and they make really high-quality watercolour paper. I've used their papers before, and I've always been very impressed with them. And this sketchbook is exactly what you'd expect from their paper line. It's really high quality. It's slightly textured, which I actually really like. When I'm working with watercolour, I really like to see the texture of the paper. And so there's a slight texture to it, and it worked really well with all the different water mediums that I was putting onto it. I did try a little bit of marker down the bottom, and I actually did get quite a nice blend, but I definitely think that the other sketchbook was better for markers, just because I think markers are better on smoother paper. But I did try out some inks. I tried out some fine liners. The fine liners, of course, on a textured paper aren't going to glide as smoothly as they would on a smooth paper, but overall this sketchbook really did hold up well to the water that I was putting onto it. And I purposely put quite a lot of water onto this paper just to kind of see how much it would buckle. It did buckle a little bit, but no more than any other watercolour paper would that I've tried for 300 grams. So I think if you're looking for a really lovely watercolour sketchbook, then this is a really good option. I did notice that the number of pages per book was different. So the white sketchbook has 25 pages, the red one has 15, and then this yellow one that I'm using here has 35. So I think it may have to do with the weight of the paper, so that all the sketchbooks kind of weigh that similar. I'm not quite sure why there is a page difference, but I did notice on their website that you could pick how many pages you wanted in your sketchbook, so they may have just sent me just like a random assortment of different sizes, and I think it's one of the things you can customize a bit within options. So if you're interested in that, you can definitely check that out. So now I'm working on this brown paper sketchbook, and I was really excited to test out this paper, because the only other tan or brown paper sketchbook I've used is the Strathmore one, and while that's very nice, the paper in that is really thin, and it's also quite hard to get hold of here in Europe, so I was really happy to find this alternative. And this is 150-gram paper, so it's much thinner than the watercolor paper, but it's still much thicker than normal sketchbook paper, so it's really nice to work on. And it's actually, interestingly, it's made from 30% recycled coffee cups, so I thought that was quite interesting. And the brown colour is actually exclusive to this company, so it's an exclusive shade. So I tested out quite a few different coloured pencils, as you saw earlier. I tried Polychromos, Prismacolors, Coloursoft, Procolour, and some luminance. I have a few pencils in each of the different brands, so I just tested them out, and I was really surprised at how well they all showed up. Often on the Strathmore Tone Tan sketchbook, I've used Prismacolors. They work well, but with the Polychromos, for instance, I found that Polychromos don't tend to work so well on tone tan papers, but they showed up really well on this paper, so I was really happy with that. All the ink and the paint pens I used worked really nicely. I did do some tests with markers. Now, when you're using markers on a coloured paper, you're going to get a very toned down vintage looking effect, which can be really nice if that's what you're going for. But I would definitely use this particular book more for coloured pencils and paint pens, so sort of like opaque mediums, which I think worked really well. And with all the sketchbooks, I was really happy with them all. I think they all worked very nicely. They're all really high quality books. The markers did bleed through to the back of the page on all of them. That's to be expected of alcohol-based markers. 90% of sketchbooks are going to do that. And even though none of the markers bled through to the underneath page, I would always place a scrap piece of paper. If I'm using markers in any of these sketchbooks, I would place a scrap piece of paper under the page that I'm working on, just to protect my underneath page, because with these swatches, I'm not oversaturating the page with ink. So if you end up doing a lot of blending, then you're definitely going to want a bit of extra protection under there. But all of these sketchbooks worked really well with multiple mediums. I think the white sketchbook is really good for an all-round mixed media book. If you want to have a book where you can put lots of different media on the pages and not worry about it, I think the white book is definitely the best. And I will leave individual links for all the sketchbooks and a link to the company website in the description box below if you're interested. The red one is a really nice watercolor paper sketchbook, and then obviously the brown paper sketchbook is also a really lovely book if you're looking for an off-white tan coloured sketchbook. And the other thing I did test on all of them is the rubbing out. So if you're someone like me who does a lot of rubbing out when you're doing your pencil sketches, I rub out a lot. So often the paper I have needs to be able to stand up to repeated erasing, and all the sketchbooks stood up to that quite well. I did some tests with a graphite pencil and rubbed them out. All of them rubbed out really nicely. So that's about it for this review video. I really hope you enjoyed it. Thank you, Pink Pig, for sending me these sketchbooks, and I hope that these kind of colour swatches kind of helped to show you what could work on different paper, on the different papers. I really didn't find anything that didn't work on these sketchbooks, to be honest, so I was really pleased about that. The only thing is I would go easy on the markers, just because I think the papers would use the markers up a bit quicker than a non-mixed media or non-watercolour paper would. So that's just something to bear in mind, but I think generally these are really nice sketchbooks. So anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Make sure you leave any questions you have in the comments down below, and I'll do my best to answer them. And I hope you all have a wonderful week, and I will see you next time.